Time to do it this morning. But when you read all those details, you might ask yourself, good grief. I mean, why so much? Why so many rules? Why be so legalistic? I mean, isn't it enough? I mean, God did a miracle in your life. There was this incredible moment in which God just showed up. Isn't that enough? Why do you got to have all the rules? Why all the standards? And the reason they did that is because they knew something. Nehemiah knew something. He knew, just like we need to know, that big, powerful, aha, God moment, that's never enough to enable you to persevere to the end. That you've got to have something else. You've got to weave in these standards. And so that's what they did. And then Nehemiah closes. And basically, when Nehemiah leaves, everything hits the fan. You remember in chapter 1 when Nehemiah left, he told the king, if I go, I'm going to come back at a certain time. And the certain time that they had agreed on was 12 years. So after 12 years, Nehemiah returns, and in his absence, the people of Israel started intermarrying. They married Moabite women and women from Ashdod and all these other places. They no longer supported the temple. They no longer did with their money what God said to do with their money. They were buying and selling on the Sabbath. Every single promise that they had made, they had broken. And then Nehemiah comes back into town. And I just want you to imagine, if you're Nehemiah, how mad would you be? Can you imagine Nehemiah coming back into town, and they're the people, they see Nehemiah kind of on his horse, and they start whispering to one another, did you see Nehemiah? Does he look mad? Is he carrying a weapon? Okay. Did he see what we were doing on the Sabbath? Did he see your wife? Did he see your girlfriend? Did he see y'all out at the club worshiping idols? Is he mad? How mad would you be if you poured the best years of your life, if you poured your emotional capital, your money, tons of money, if you put everything into this group of people and you finally got it back to where it's supposed to be? Just imagine yourself, for those of you who are parents, you see this all the time. You finally got your kid, they knew what was right, they were living right, they were doing everything right, and then you turn your back for just 1 minute, 1 second, and everything had hit the fan. Everything was undone. How mad would you be? But Nehemiah gets pretty upset. He comes back into town. You look in chapter 13, you can read all the details. He basically sees that they had developed some unholy relationships. Tobiah, one of Nehemiah's arch nemesis, he was actually living in the temple. Instead of them putting grain and the first fruits and the tithe in the temple room, they had let Tobiah move in there. Bad move. He sees that they're no longer honoring the Sabbath. They were buying and selling on the Sabbath, and he gets so upset that he runs the other nations literally out of town. He runs them out of the gate. Look there in chapter 13, verse 20. The merchants are out there, they're outside. Okay, Nehemiah had run them out. And it's almost as if Nehemiah peeps his head over the wall. Verse 20, the merchants and sellers of all kinds of wares lodged outside of Jerusalem once or twice. Okay, that's 1 week and then the next week. Verse 21, but I warned them and said to them, why do you lodge outside the wall? If you do so again, I'm going to thump you. Okay? I'll lay hands on you. This is a man of God. I'll punch you in the face. You pagan other nations, I just want you to know something. If you try to come in here again on the Sabbath, I'm going to beat you up. I wonder if Nehemiah was a buff guy or he had little man syndrome and just had a really big attitude. But here he is. He's basically saying, I am serious and I am mad. It gets better. Look at verse 23. He sees the fact that they had begun intermarrying, marrying other women from other cultures. So verse 23 says, in those days also I saw the Jews who had married women of Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Remember those? The 3 nations around Jerusalem that were trying to thwart the building of the wall. The enemies of Jerusalem. I saw people marrying those women. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod, and they could not speak the language of Judah, but only the language of each people. And I confronted them and cursed them. and beat some of them and pulled out their hair. Is that your wife? Oh, hey, Nehemiah. Hey, come here. What were you thinking? Pulls his hair out, pulls out his beard. I can't believe you married her. Well, she's hot. I don't care. You know you weren't supposed to do that. He was mad. Now, you might think to yourself, Nehemiah, chill out. What about grace? What about mercy? Why so serious, as the Joker would say? And the reason Nehemiah was so serious is because he knew when you begin messing around with the law, when you no longer live up to God's standards that He's put in your life, when you're no longer living according to God's design for marriage or for your finances, when it comes to your church, you remove yourself from the umbrella of God's blessing and position yourself to be in a place where the Lord will discipline you. And he knew from the past, every time Israel got away from the Lord, he would bring in another nation and discipline them.